Welcome to the Purple Positivity Podcast for March the 26th, 2018. I am your host, the amazingly adorable Rebecca Thistle, podcasting to you live-ish from my kitchen/dining room table in my apartment, which I call Jeffrey Thistlework. Yes. So, today's show is called Shooting All Over Myself. Yeah. What does that mean, Becca? Well, I'll get into it, imaginary voice inside my head. It was really funny. I was talking to someone yesterday, and I said, I think I'm going to do a podcast tomorrow about shooting all over myself. And he went, shitting all over yourself? What? It was really funny. But, no, shooting all over myself. So, the reason that this sort of came up in my head is, I've been doing a lot of ukulele videos lately, and so I've been practicing my ukulele a lot lately, and, so I've been, essentially going through my repertoire, my very extensive repertoire, I might add, of songs. Like, I've completely lost track of how many songs I can cover on my ukulele. But one of those songs is from a band called The Offspring, which you may or may not remember. That's called Self-Esteem. So I kind of went through it and refreshed myself and went, I don't really want to post this one yet, and put it in my back pocket. But I started thinking about self-esteem because that's what my brain does. But I started getting to thinking about self-esteem, and I remembered being in college, and I took a personality psychology class. And of course, when you talk about personality and psychology, self-esteem always comes up at some point. It's just the way of the world. So my teacher actually explained self-esteem in the most tangible and I think perfect way ever, because you hear the term self-esteem thrown around so much. It's almost become a non sequitur. Like it's almost become meaningless because people throw it around so much. Oh, well, I have really low self-esteem, so yada, 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 or that person has really high self-esteem, they're a narcissist, I get it, but no one ever really seems to understand what that means. Because generally they say, oh, well, if you have high self-esteem, then obviously you think highly of yourself. Not necessarily, okay? So my teacher explained it like this. Your self-esteem is made up of two factors. Your self-perception. Actually, I think he used self-image, but I prefer self-perception. That's how you perceive yourself, how you actually see yourself. And then your self-expectation, which is what you expect of yourself. And so the greater the gap between these two factors, the worse your self-esteem is. But the narrower that gap is, if that gap even exists, the higher your self-esteem is. So, one of the things that he then went on to say, my professor, was that raising our self-expectation by using the word should in our, or I should say overuse of the word should in our internal dialogue contributes to low self-esteem, because that fucks around with your self-perception. So he called it shooting all over yourself. And now you know why it's called this. So, I remember this, and I started thinking about how often do I sit around and should on myself? And I mean, and it's not just me that shoulds on me. My family does it. My friends do it. Well-meaning. I get it. But ultimately, I'm the one that gets to choose which of their shoulds I allow into my internal dialogue. So, one of my regular shoulds that comes around is I should have my bachelor's degree. I should have a career. I should have a stable life. I should be married. I should not be a single mom. Because that was not what was expected of me as a kid. That the way my life has gone is not the way that I wanted it to go, or I expected it to go, let alone what my family wanted or expected. But and I'm sure a lot of people in this world, especially in my generation, can relate to that. That there's a lot of I'll be 32 in September, and I didn't follow the beaten path. I haven't followed the beaten path, And I can feel bad about that, and I can should all over myself, saying, well, I should have taken that opportunity. I should have gone down that road. I should have done this. I should have done that. Should. Are you sick of hearing that word yet? I'm sick of saying it. But I'll probably say it a bunch more times by the end of this episode. But when I really stop and think about it, I'm on my own journey. And maybe it's not the typical journey. Maybe it's not the easiest journey. Maybe it's not the most life-affirming. But I'm where I need to be. I'm on the road I need to take. When I was going to Texas State Technical College for chemical dependency counseling, there was one thing I heard more than anything else in my classes there, and that was, you've got to meet people where they're at. So, A, bad grammar. I don't like to say that. I'm just internally cringed. And B, meeting people where they are is not just about other people. You gotta meet yourself where you are. And say, and stop shoulding. Maybe I should have my degree. Maybe I should have a husband and a career and a stable life and maybe even a mortgage. Maybe I should have that white picket fence and that 2.5 kids and, the nuclear family. Maybe I should be and do a lot of things. But I don't think any of that would well and truly make me happy. I think where I am right now is where I need to be. And maybe it's not like the most amazing and awe-inspiring comeback story, but every comeback story has to have a starting place. You can't have a comeback without a setback. And I've had a lot of setbacks, so I've got to have a comeback coming pretty spectacularly down the road. I don't know when, I don't know how, but it's coming. So, and I think the first step in that process of turning things around is to stop the negative shoulding. Instead of saying, well, I should have done this, I should have done this, I should do this, I should have my degree, I should be doing XYZ. My older stepsister and my younger sister both have really awesome lives. I mean, not perfect lives, obviously. Nobody does. And here's me in the middle, just narrowly dodged homelessness last month, assembling pens for a living, and doing 2 podcasts and contemplating starting a 3rd, just because I hate Sundays. Side note here, this has nothing to do with shooting all over myself. I don't know. I get really bored on Sundays because there's no buses here on Sundays, and there's nowhere to go, and there's nothing to do unless somebody calls me up and says, hey, Becca, let's go do something. And so I get really bored, and eventually I enter what Douglas Adams called the long, dark tea time of the soul. And so I'm thinking I may start another podcast so that I can record it on Sundays and not enter the long, dark tea time of the soul. But that's beside the point. I can should all over myself because my life isn't perfect. Well, my life isn't following the trajectory of my siblings. Or I can say, you know what? That's their journey. That's their journey. They've got their own obstacles. They've got their own struggles. They've got their own battles that they're fighting. And it has nothing to do with my journey, my obstacles, my battle. It's a different path. And as I mentioned in last week's show about letting go, this decision to not compare is not something you just make once. It is something that you have to make regularly. So, every time I'm scrolling through Facebook and I see, how great one of my friends' lives is going, and I go, oh, my life is crap, I assemble pens, and I start shooting on myself for all the things that I didn't do right with my life, I have to take a deep breath and say, no, Becca, that's their journey. That's a post on Facebook. You don't know what's behind that post, what came before that post, what came after that post. You don't know. But that is their journey. That is their moment. You can be happy for them in that moment.